Welcome back to another episode of Hightop Sports. Oregon Duck fans, you guys landing yourself a massive five-star wide receiver commit today, but I'm not going to tell you about that. We're going to go over to our recruiting insider, Cody the Professor, and Oregon Duck insider, Derek Zelmer, to tell you more about this. But be sure to smash the like button so you guys are staying up to date with all Oregon Duck news. We'll let you guys hear from them now.
Hey man, I'm great. Anytime we land a big commit, nice big splash to be made on this Saturday. So yeah, couldn't be more excited about it.
Yeah, for sure. And let's go ahead and break down who the Oregon Ducks decided to go out and go after.
Yeah, absolutely. So someone we've been tracking for a while now is five-star wide receiver Gatlin Bair out of the state of Idaho. 6'1", 194 guy, well known for his elite track speed. Translates very well to the football field, as you were able to see from some of his highlights. He is the highest ranked recruit out of the state of Idaho ever since recruiting rankings have been a thing. He was a one-time Boise State commit, as we're all, I'm sure, aware. He was trending heavily toward Michigan for a while. He was considered a heavy Michigan lean for the last, 2.5 months or so. I think once Jim Harbaugh officially announced that he was heading to the next level at the NFL, the tides kind of turned to the Ducks, and that's where the focus has been for the last 2 weeks. One of these guys who Gatlin has elite speed, to say the least. I think we were talking, in the back room here, and he ran a 10.15 100, which is just, I can't emphasize how fast that really is. He's not just a track guy by any metric. It translates very well to the playing field, as you're able to see from some of his highlights here. I know one thing that Gatlin has been talking about over the last 2 weeks was he was searching for a little bit of coaching consistency. As we know, there was a little turnover at Boise State. Obviously, Jim Harbaugh and a number of the staff members from the national championship Michigan roster have moved on or decided to go separate ways. So I think that really weighed heavily into the decision to, transition his focus from the Wolverines over back to the Ducks. Once again, it's just a product of Dan staying consistent with Gatlin. I know, from all the insiders that he'd been in constant communication through the whole part. Once he committed to Boise State, stayed in communication, all through the smoke of the Michigan lean, stayed in constant contact, made a number of visits. And ultimately it ended up paying off here for the Ducks, which is
sorry to cut you off there. Obviously, a little bit concerned with Saban retiring. That's right in the middle of his recruitment, and Dan was up there on the list of guys that could have took that job, right?
Yeah, and I know that's a very hot button topic. It was a very, very rough 2 days for the Oregon fans. There was a whole ton of turmoil on the social media channels, just at the idea that Dan could be, moving on from the Oregon program, especially with what we've seen over the last 10 years or so with, Willie Taggart, Mario saying, no, I'm not going anywhere, ultimately dipping out to Miami. And then it was just a little bit of, PTSD, if you will, hearing Dan's name mentioned with the Alabama job. So yeah, it was absolutely massive for not only the guys on the roster to stay consistent with the program, but some of these recruits. Like you could just tell how much that weighed into a lot of these recruits ultimately choosing to be a Duck at the end of the day.
Yeah, and for people to say that little video that Dan put out doesn't matter. Obviously, the video that we are referring is the one on Twitter that they put out. The Oregon football program put out, said that he wants to be in Eugene for a long time, and that if your coach is going somewhere, go ahead and come here, because obviously he's not going anywhere. And for this to play such a pivotal impact in this young wide receiver's recruitment, I think that video alone might have sealed the deal for him.
Oh yeah. I mean, you've seen it. Half the internet's seen it. I think it had well over, 1 million views. So it was plastered all over, and, it sent a very direct message. Not only to the recruits, but the fans as well. It definitely gave me goosebumps watching it, but that it's not often you have a coach really come out and say, look, I'm not going anywhere, really doubling down on it, just because, not only at Oregon, we've seen that happen at almost every program in the nation at some point, where a coach says, hey, I'm committed to this program. I want to be here. another offer comes along, somebody floats a bag in front of their face at another location and they ultimately decide to leave. But it just speaks volumes to Dan and his character and what he's committed to at Eugene, for him to double down, not only after the Texas Tech rumors, or excuse me, the Texas A&M rumors took place a little bit earlier in the season, but once again, once this Bama job came up, he didn't shy away from the limelight to let everybody know exactly where he's going to be and where you can find him.
Yeah, and I think Lanning could have went to both places and been very, very successful. And I've always felt that if Oregon could just get a coach, the number one, the right coach, and the right coach to stick it out. It's always kind of been a stepping stone school for some of these other bigger blue blood programs, which I never understood why. Minus the location, obviously it's way, way out west. But you're going to the Big Ten. You're going to get the limelight. You're probably going to get some of the night games also. But I always wondered, like, if they could get a guy, man, could he really turn this thing into a powerhouse? And this shows me getting another top recruit. What does this? I mean, this has to be the best Oregon recruiting class ever, correct? With the add of a 5-star.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, let's speak hypothetically here for a second. Say Gatlin decided to, follow through with his Michigan lean at the end of his recruiting class. This would still be the highest ranked recruiting class in Oregon history. So, it would be an understatement to say that Gatlin Bair's addition, it doesn't speak, isn't massive for the program. The recruiting class continues to stack. I will say, I think this is probably the last move that we see in the 24 class before, the final signing day. But yeah, and I know you were kind of talking about the move to the Big Ten there and what that means. I think we might be having a very different conversation if Oregon wasn't able to secure their spot in the Big Ten. Just because we're all aware of what happened to the Pac-12 and kind of how their members decided to disperse, what that ultimately ended up meaning for Oregon State and Washington State. But the fact that Oregon got a seat at the big kids table, if you will, I think that was really a heavy factor in Dan's decision to make Eugene a home, and to really continue to double down on the fact that this is where he's going to be, and he speaks on it all the time that he wants to turn this into a national powerhouse, and he has all the resources and, allocated funds to do so. And, I think it continues to be evident with additions like, Gatlin Bair here.
So, with the addition of Gatlin Bair, I went ahead while you were talking and I pulled up the recruiting calculator, something we like to do here at Hightop. And that puts you at 302. With that would put Oregon. I'm looking it up right now. It's got to be way up there. Total.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I think what we were sitting at compositely, we were sitting at 6 for a while. I know that the margin between us and a school like Miami, who was, I believe, just ahead of us, was razor thin. So I imagine this kind of puts us somewhere in that, 3 to 4 range, I'm assuming.
Let's see here real fast. So Oregon is third now with 27 commits at 302 points. Yes, you get past another class. I think that Miami has a lot of 3-stars. You guys do not, and this adds your another 5-star to that class. So as of right now, the 2024 class, you guys are ranked third. A very, very healthy class, and something that is going to could possibly win you a national championship one day. You got to have a top 5 class to win a national championship, is what they say, minus Michigan.
Oh, absolutely. Overall, it's something we've seen. You take a look at the past national champions from the last 10 years, go take a look at their stacked recruiting classes from years previous. And yeah, it 100% holds true. And I don't think the exception is Oregon. If they're able to keep compounding these classes, it's just going to further push them to the top of, the national powerhouses. Until someone's able to dethrone the likes of Georgia and Alabama on a consistent basis, I'm not going to be the one to come out here and say Oregon and, they're right up there next to them. I think that's something that absolutely has to be earned and consistently from year to year. With that being said, I think all the pieces are in place to put yourself in a position to start having those conversations as the years go forward.
And I'm going to say this. This is as wild as it gets. You guys now officially have the top class in the Big Ten. You've passed Ohio State. You guys are now the big recruiting dogs in the Big Ten. How does that feel?
Man, I think myself and a number of other Duck fans, we just been riding a high in terms of this recruiting class for a while now. And then, just to get this nice little cherry on top at the end of the cycle, man, it's a great feeling. And like you said, if you want to compete at the highest level, you need to absolutely have classes like this. Ohio State, they've been an elite program for a number of years. And year one to come in and you top a conference like the Big Ten, a power two right now, if you will. It's absolutely massive, and I can't understate that.
Yeah, it's absolutely wild what Dan Lanning has been able to put together. Let's go ahead and just see kind of what you're kind of getting. And Mr. Gatlin, 6'1", 195 from Idaho, 5-star wide receiver, ranked 27th nationally, 6th ranked wide receiver in the class. I have him as an elite route runner. Special teams ace. He can do the punt return, kick return. I saw a couple clips where he does the pop pass well, which is very big in the college football and NFL now. That little pop pass to him. He can run the ball. I like him as almost a young Christian McCaffrey. He has that build and that absolute blazing speed. You just see the burst from this young man, and it is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, we've said it on a number of programs. You can't teach speed, and especially when you're talking about elite top end track speed like Gatlin possesses. That's I can't emphasize enough how much that plays into his game. I see him absolutely being a special teams menace in the future. I think in terms of what he's going to be as a wide receiver, I see him in the slot a lot, which is great. He has excellent potential. He high points the ball very well. As we know, he's an all-state jumper as well as a sprinter. So, he contains just massive amounts of athleticism. He's an athletic specimen, if you will. Players like this don't come around very often, to be the highest ranked recruit out of your state in the history of recruiting rankings. That really speaks volumes to exactly how big of a freak you are in terms of what you bring to the table in your game. Ultimately, I think what they'll probably try to do with him is get him to bulk up just a tad. I think we'll see him put on a little bit more of that lean weight to really, take his game to the next level. I think the one thing that people are a little skeptical on in terms of Gatlin is the level of competition he played in Idaho. Idaho is not necessarily a hotbed for, elite recruits necessarily. And he didn't necessarily play a very difficult schedule in like the grand scheme of, what we see in the rest of the country. With that being said, a player of this caliber, you would expect to see him go out there and absolutely dominate that level of competition, because at the end of the day, you can only play who's in front of you, right? He doesn't make his schedule. And, we understand that. We would like to see him play the upper echelon of competition just to see kind of how he reacts, how he plays against other people at that same level. He didn't necessarily get that opportunity, at least in high school ball. He was a frequent in certain camps and stuff and performed very well, but it's just different when you get on to the team field. So I would say that's his one critique that people like to mention. With that being said, that level of competition he was playing, he was absolutely dominant. We saw every single week, you go look at that man's stats and he was putting up a show. So it's really excited to be able to add him to this class. I know people are also a little bit concerned with the idea that he won't be coming onto campus until the 2026 season. He's going to go on his mission. It's a 2-year mission. Don't quote me on it 100%, but I believe this mission is in the Dallas, Texas vicinity. So it's not like he's going crazy far. He has talked about previously how he plans on, ramping up his training even on the mission. He's got his coaches and trainers down there. So he'll be continuing to develop his game. But, in terms of immediate impact, it'll be a couple of years before we see him hit the field for the Ducks, at this point at least.
Yeah, which could change. I will say this: when you brought up the Idaho scenario, and I I have to agree to a point, but if let's say you stick him on Willis, Texas with DJ Lagway, a absolute freak quarterback, I think he could probably have double what he did at Idaho because with that lower echelon competition, number one, everybody defensive coordinator our defensive coordinators are going to go after you, right? They're going to scheme it up against you. Number two, everybody knows you're the best player on the field. They're going to double coverage you. Number three, you don't have great linemen. You don't have great running backs. You don't have great quarterbacks to get you the ball, right? And so I think that what I saw in his film, I think the kid can pop in Florida. I think he pops in Oklahoma and Texas, California. I don't care where you put him. I think he's just that good.
Oh yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, he's a 5-star wide receiver for a reason. It's not the first time we've seen a 5-star caliber player come out of a state that is not necessarily known for their level of competition.
Yep.
They understand the amount of potential that comes with it, and going back to the competition you are playing, sure, he's not playing against, the best of the best defensive backs and linebackers and safeties. With that being said, he's also not getting fed from the best of the best or even close to it, from his quarterback position, from his offensive line. It's like, if you really watch his film, he has to make a lot of adjustments, just due to his speed. Obviously it's hard for quarterbacks to be able to lead a guy who's running, a 10-1-500. Like, he's absolutely blazing, but he makes those adjustments extremely well. He seems to do so with great fluidity. So yeah, it's just with the competition he had, he did what you would expect from him. Like you said, I think if you put him in Texas, you put him in Florida, Georgia, Ohio, some of these hotbeds for recruiting talent, I think he excels regardless.
All right, guys, another exciting episode here and a big get for the Oregon Ducks. Go ahead, like and subscribe. Derek is going to keep you right on there. We have a Twitter page. He's active there. One last following adios before we go here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, be sure obviously to subscribe to the YouTube channel here at Hightop Oregon. Our brand's just getting started, really starting to take off here. And especially with some of the stuff coming up in the next few weeks, you're going to want to tune in and see what the Ducks have to offer. Lots of exciting stuff going on there. If you want to follow me personally, you can follow me at Wait Who's Derek on Twitter. But, if you really want the information, at Hightop Oregon's where it's at.
All right, guys. I am Cody the Professor, and this is Derek, and we will see you later.